The series begins in Turkey with a woman named Sul who arrives at the lake where her daughter Melek drowned. Sul collapses when she recognizes her daughter's hat. Later, we see Melek preparing breakfast for herself, but there's no food in the fridge. So she eats a rotten apple and shares it with her rabbit. She then wakes her mother, telling her she's making noise and warns her that Cengiz will hit her if he wakes up. We learn that Melek lives with her mother Sul and her stepfather Cengiz. Melek apologizes to her mother and tells her about a dog that was at school, mentioning that it died. Melek talks about what happened at school, but Sul ignores her and refuses to brush her hair. Melek obeys her mother and tries to brush her hair herself, but struggles. She kisses her mother and leaves the house. In another place, we see Zeynep, who is taking photos and is interested in migratory birds. However, she works at Melek's school. Zeynep is surprised when the principal asks her to take over a class because a teacher is sick and won't be able to come to school. Zeynep becomes anxious because she doesn't know how to handle children, but her colleague Nesrin encourages her, suggests that she have the children write about the dog that died. Zeynep follows the advice, and when she enters the classroom, she's surprised to see Melek not writing like her classmates. Melek tells Zeynep that the dog won't be able to read what she wrote, so it's pointless. Her classmates argue with her, accusing her of not loving the dog. Zeynep quiets the students, and is further surprised when Melek asks about the location of heaven. Zeynep allows her not to write if she doesn't want to. Melek is very happy because Zeynep didn't force her. During this time, Melek notices the bald spot on Zeynep's head and asks Nesrin about Melek. Nesrin tells her that Melek is indeed strange, but doesn't know the reason. She explains that Melek lost her father at a young age. Zeynep is unsure how to deal with her. At home, we see Cengiz asking Sul to make him breakfast, getting angry when he learns there's no food in the house. He argues with Sul about her daughter's toys and insults her. After school ends, we see Melek stopping Zeynep and giving her her hat, thanking her for not forcing her to write. Zeynep is surprised when Melek gives her the hat to cover the bald spot on her head. Melek returns home, happy to see her mother, but gets upset when she sees her throwing her toys in the street. She leaves to go to work and becomes scared when she enters the house. Realizing that Cengiz is home, she tries to enter quietly so he won't notice her. However, he sees her and gets angry, accusing her of waking him up on purpose because she doesn't want him to sleep. Melek apologizes, telling him she didn't mean to, but Cengiz insists on punishing her and hits her with a belt. Meanwhile, Zeynep returns home and is affected when she sees her sister Gamze's wedding invitation. We learn that Zeynep left her family home some time ago and lives alone. She sends her sister a message congratulating her and apologizing for not being able to attend. Gamze gets upset and tells their mother that her sister considers them strangers. Their mother tries to call Zeynep to find out what happened, but Zeynep doesn't answer. We return to Melek, who is crying because of the beating. Cengiz leaves to go to the club where his wife works. It becomes clear that he makes her work there to take her money. He argues with the club owner, who doesn't want to give his wife her full payment, threatens to take his wife away, saying the club will lose customers without her. The owner, fearing this, calms him down, promises to give him the money. Meanwhile, Zeynep's mother keeps calling her, but Zeynep still doesn't answer. At this time, Zeynep sees Melek sitting in front of the mosque with her rabbit. Melek sits alone till night falls. Then she goes to the restaurant where Zeynep is having dinner. Zeynep asks her to go home because it's late. Her family must be worried about her. However, Melek refuses to leave, saying she has money and asks for ice cream. Melek senses that Zeynep is annoyed with her and asks if her face always looks like that. Zeynep gets flustered when Melek points out that her eyebrows are close together. She's always frowning, but says her smile is beautiful. Melek tries to ask her a question, but Zeynep doesn't want to answer and tells her she doesn't like children. Melek then asks why she became a teacher if she doesn't like children. Zeynep explains that she's not a teacher and is only working temporarily. Melek shows her notebook where she writes about the things she likes and asks Zeynep to do the same. Zeynep asks Melek what she was doing alone near the mosque. Melek gets sad but changes the subject, saying that when she grows up, she'll be a teacher like Zeynep and will love all the children and treat them well. Zeynep is shocked when she notices the scars on Melek's hands but doesn't know the cause. She then offers to take Melek home, but Melek refuses, saying she can go by herself. When she returns home, she sees Cengiz's shoes and sneaks in quietly, going straight to bed, terrified. The next day, Zeynep enters the classroom and is surprised to find Melek not eating like her classmates. Melek lies and tells her she ate at home, but the students reveal to Zeynep that Melek never brings food, not even on trips. Embarrassed, Melek goes to the bathroom but takes a long time. Zeynep asks her colleague to check on Melek. Zeynep is shocked when the student informs her that Melek has fainted in the bathroom, apparently from hunger. Zeynep rushes to her her and tries to revive her with the help of Nesrin, who lets her rest in the office. Nesrin tells Zeynep that they must take Melek to the doctor to understand what happened, suspecting malnutrition due to Melek's very low weight for her age. Zeynep is further alarmed when Nesrin reveals that Melek has many signs of physical abuse on her body. Zeynep asks Nesrin to look after Melek while she gets her mother's contact number from the administration. During this time, Melek is sleeping in the office. Zeynep goes to her, and Melek asks her to stay with her because she doesn't want to talk to Nesrin, who constantly asks if she loves her mother or if her mother takes care of her. Zeynep asks what she means. Melek tells her she loves her mother, of course, and lies, saying all mothers take care of their children. She tells Zeynep she wasn't sick, just tired and wanted to sleep. Zeynep is puzzled when Melek refuses to go home, saying she wants to stay at school. Nesrin calls Sul, tells her husband that she will go to school to pick up their daughter. Cengiz demands the money Sul has. Sul says she needs it, but Cengiz insists that all her money belongs to him. Sula reluctantly gives him the money, goes to school to get Melek without asking what happened. Nesrin tells her they need to talk to understand Melek's situation better, that Melek needs to go to the hospital to find out what's wrong. Sul refuses, saying Melek is her daughter and she knows what's best for her. Melek interrupts, asking her mother to take her home because she wants to sleep. Zeynep watches them leave and then goes to the university to meet someone named Engin, who is interested in migratory birds. Zeynep shows him the new photos she has taken. At this time, Ali, Engin's brother, appears and seems smitten with Zeynep at first sight. He's impressed by her photos, and Engin tells her he's excited for her to join his research team. The problem is that the dean hasn't approved the budget yet. Zeynep informs him that she has looked for another job while waiting for his response. Ali asks if she is interested in migratory birds. Engin shows him her photos before introducing them. Zeynep excuses herself and leaves. The next day, she gets worried when Melek doesn't come to school. Nesrin decides to talk to the principal about Melek's situation, telling him they need to contact social services because she suspects Melek is experiencing domestic violence. However, the principal is skeptical, thinking Nesrin is overreacting because she read a book about child abuse. Nevertheless, he agrees to let Nesrin and Zeynep visit Melek's house to verify the situation before involving social services. Zeynep reluctantly accompanies her. They knock on the door, but no one answers. A neighbor tells them that only Cengiz is home, and that Sul and her husband fight so much that the whole neighborhood is tired of them. Before Nesrin and Zeynep leave, they see Sul and Melek returning home. Noticing that Melek has an injured eye, Sul speaks to them harshly, saying she called the principal to inform him that Melek is sick. Nesrin tries to check on Melek, who lies and says the other kids hit her with a ball in the eye. Nesrin doesn't believe her and confronts Sul, saying Melek's body has signs of abuse. Sul gets angry and tells her to mind her own business, insisting that Melek is her daughter, she can do as she pleases. Melek tries to calm her mother, lying to everyone and saying she wants to go inside to eat because Cengiz has set the table. Nesrin is surprised that Melek is protecting her mother, even though she is the one who needs protection. Nesrin returns to the principal and argues with him for not wanting to intervene, telling him she won't stay silent even if she has to kidnap Melek. The principal gets angry, reminding her that she knows the laws and leaves. Meanwhile, Melek is at home, very hungry, and can't find anything to eat, so she eats sugar. She searches the house until she finds Cengiz's food, tries to open the bag without him noticing. Fortunately, he sees her, decides to punish her by putting her in a black bag. Zeynep goes to the university because the dean wants to see her. She waits for Engin in the library, where she meets Ali, who tries to start a conversation with her, but Zeynep doesn't give him a chance. Sul returns home and is shocked to find her daughter in a garbage bag. She quickly pulls her out, crying. Melek lies to reassure her mother, saying they were just playing. Sul warns Cengiz not to do such things again because people are watching them. Melek leaves the house and sits in front of the mosque in the cold. At this time, Zeynep sees her and asks what she's doing. Melek remains silent and goes home with Zeynep. Zeynep calls Nesrin to take Melek back home. Noticing that Melek is very hungry, Zeynep prepares food for her. Melek is very happy and eats a lot. She lies to Zeynep, saying her mother cooks a lot of food. Zeynep asks her about the food her mother makes, and Melek becomes flustered, not knowing how to respond. Zeynep realizes Melek doesn't eat regularly and encourages her to continue eating. Melek asks if Zeynep's mother is as nice as she is. Zeynep tells her she doesn't remember much because she hasn't seen her mother in a long time. Melek is surprised when Zeynep admits she hates her mother. Melek thanks Zeynep for the food, but Zeynep, not knowing how to respond, tells her she's not good at talking much. Melek asks Zeynep to talk about the things she likes, so Zeynep reads to her about migratory birds. Melek gets excited and says she wants to see them flying. She is thrilled when Zeynep agrees to show her the birds and asks if she can stay the night and watch them together in the morning. Melek declines, fearing her mother would worry about her. Just then, Nesrin arrives and takes Melek home. Nesrin argues with Sul, telling her she found her daughter in the street late at night and that no mother neglects her child like that. Sul yells at her, telling her to stay out of their personal matters, and kicks her out of the house. The next day, Zeynep finds Melek's notebook at her place. At that moment, Engin calls and excites her with the news that their project has been approved. They need to travel soon. Zeynep goes to the principal and informs him that she will be leaving the job because her project has been approved. The principal tries to convince her to stay, but fails since Zeynep had made it clear from the start she was working temporarily. We then see Sul, who doesn't want to tell Cengiz what happened, but he forces her to talk. She tells him that Melek's teacher found her in the street, brought her home. She also mentions that the teacher scolded her, but she talked back. Cengiz decides to punish Melek by killing her rabbit. At school, Melek goes to Zeynep's office and reminds her of the promise to see the migratory birds. Zeynep tells her she didn't promise that. Seeing Melek upset, Zeynep tells her to talk to Nesrin if she ever has a problem. Disheartened, Melek returns home and is shocked to find her rabbit's cage empty. She starts crying and calling for it, asking her mother where it is. Sul tells her the rabbit is in heaven now and asks her not to be sad because the rabbit has died and is at peace. Because everyone in the house is suffering, Melek cries, and her mother tells her that Cengiz found out about the school incident. That's why he got angry. Melek breaks down and talks to her rabbit, saying she's not sad because he must be full in heaven. When night falls, Zeynep returns home, opens Melek's notebook, and reads about the things that make her happy. At the same time, Melek is at home. Cengiz asks her to bring him food. Melek obeys and brings him food but can't carry the tea, which falls to the floor. Cengiz beats her until she faints and puts her in a garbage bag. Sul helps him, utterly broken but unable to refuse him. She suggests they go to a hotel for the night, arguing with Cengiz and asking him to leave. Meanwhile, Zeynep calls Engin after preparing everything for the trip, telling him she'll meet him in 2 hours. Zeynep decides to return the notebook to Melek, but finds no one at home. She is shocked when she sees the garbage bag moving and realizes Melek is inside. She rushes to save her, takes her home, and treats her wounds until she regains consciousness. Zeynep is distressed by the injuries on Melek's face and asks if she wants anything. Melek remains silent, crying, then asks Zeynep to take her to the mosque. Zeynep asks why. Melek gives her a paper with a story about a couple who adopted a child from in front of a mosque. Zeynep breaks down, realizing that Melek has been sitting in front of the mosque, hoping someone would adopt her. Melek says she's grown up now, and people only adopt younger children. Zeynep feels for her and cries. The next day, they go out to watch the birds together, talking about the things Melek loves. Migratory birds appear, and Melek runs after them, asking them to take her to the sky. Water splashes on her feet, making her realize she's standing on the ground. Zeynep runs to her and tells her she's decided to take her away because she wants to be her mother and live together in a faraway place. She promises to start a new life and be a real mother to her, taking care of her. She asks Melek if she agrees. Melek cries, calls her mom, and begs her to help. Zeynep hugs her, reassures her, and tells her she's not alone. She instructs Melek to go back home and act normally, so no one suspects anything. Sul is relieved when she finds Melek at home but can't show it. She asks Melek to stay quiet because Cengiz is sleeping. During this time, Zeynep prepares money, withdraws her savings from the bank, sells her car, and buys new clothes for Melek, who is still at home. Melek doesn't want to take anything extra to avoid suspicion. She leaves money for her mother to buy a new rabbit, but Melek refuses to take anything, packs her things, and leaves, forgetting her notebook. Melek then goes to the pier as Zeynep instructed and stands on the edge, hoping someone will notice and call out to warn her. However, everyone is distracted. During this moment, Melek throws her hat into the water and disappears immediately. Pier worker is shocked, thinking she fell into the water, and asks the young men to search for her. Melek successfully escapes with Zeynep, and they travel together to Istanbul without anyone noticing. At the station, Zeynep sees the news and becomes frightened. Melek hides beside her. Ali appears, and Zeynep tells Melek to move away so he won't see her. Zeynep is stunned to learn that Ali will be traveling on the same bus, but she relaxes when he has to leave to cover the story about Melek's disappearance because he works as a journalist. Before leaving, Ali gives Zeynep his card, telling her to contact him if she needs anything. After he leaves, Zeynep searches for Melek, who runs to her and holds her hand. Zeynep is moved, and they board the bus together. Meanwhile, Sul is at the pier, waiting for them to pull her daughter from the water. Cengiz calls her, but Sul doesn't answer, making him angry because she is late for work. The next day, Zeynep and Melek are on the bus. Melek asks Zeynep if her mother used to brush her hair and if it made her happy. Zeynep says no because she felt like a burden and always apologized for it. Melek asks why she felt that way, and Zeynep reveals she was adopted, which is why she hates her biological mother for abandoning her. She says she doesn't remember her mother's face, but still hates her. At this moment, we see Melek's biological mother being released from prison. The rescue team continues searching for Melek but can't find her. The police decide to take Sul's statement and return her home because the search area is too vast, making it difficult to find Melek. Sul, in shock, walks with them silently. The press tries to get a statement from her, but Sul remains silent, glancing at Ali before continuing on her way. Ali talks to the officer, asking how he can contact the girl's mother. The officer says she's currently too distressed to speak. The officer becomes irritated when Ali asks if he's sure the girl is dead since her body hasn't been found, suggesting she might still be alive. The officer retorts that he doesn't need Ali to teach him his job and walks away. Meanwhile, Zeynep and Melek arrive in Istanbul. Melek, excited, asks Zeynep if she had a house in Istanbul. Zeynep tells her that her mother lives in the city, but they won't be visiting her. They are shocked when they hear people talking about the news of Melek's death. Zeynep tries to hide Melek to avoid being seen by the cameras and becomes more anxious when they reach the security checkpoint because they will ask for Melek's ID. We then see Gonul, Zeynep's biological mother, who has just been released from prison and goes to stay at the house of a friend she made in prison. Gonul lives in her friend's house and runs her shop until she gets out. We return to Zeynep, who pretends in front of the officer that she is looking for her daughter's ID. Melek saves her by saying she needs to go to the bathroom and keeps insisting until the officer lets them go without seeing her ID. Zeynep is pleased and praises Melek's cleverness for saving them, but Melek really needs to go to the bathroom. Zeynep takes her to the bathroom and waits outside until she finishes. However, Melek asks Zeynep to come in with her because the door is broken and won't lock. Zeynep helps her and forgets her bags outside. She is shocked when she comes out and finds the bags missing, realizing they have been stolen. Zeynep is devastated because all her money was stolen. At this moment, Melek spots their bags, but the thieves have taken the money, left the bags on the road. Zeynep is disheartened, especially since she cannot report it to the police. Melek apologizes and hugs her. Meanwhile, Sula returns home. Cengiz sees her from the window and asks about the man who was with her. He gets angry when she doesn't respond, but is terrified to learn that the man was a police officer. Sul tells him that Melek drowned in the lake and won't be coming back. We return to Zeynep, who reassures Melek and tells her they will board the ship in front of them. She explains that their journey is long, but she will get money. Melek is happy to board the ship, and Zeynep tells her they need to change her name to start a new life. Melek likes the new name and agrees to it. At this time, Gonul visits Kahide, Zeynep's adoptive mother. It becomes clear they knew each other, and Kahide hid the fact that Zeynep's mother was in prison to protect her. Kahide becomes flustered when she meets Gonul, who tells her she has finally returned to her life and reveals her whereabouts. Gonul notices Kahide's nervousness and reluctance to continue the conversation. Gonul says she came to thank Kahide for taking care of her daughter while she was in prison and for keeping the situation a secret. Kahide responds that she didn't need anyone to tell her how to raise Zeynep, treating her just like her own daughters without any difference. Gonul says she wanted to thank her for a long time, but came late, expressing that she misses her daughter. She asks about Zeynep, whether she got married. Kahide tells her that Zeynep is continuing her studies and currently living outside Istanbul. Kahide tries to explain to Gonul that it will be difficult for her to see her daughter because Zeynep has been adopted and her siblings don't know about it. She asks Gonul to keep her promise and maintain the secret. Gonul says she just wanted to check on her daughter because she's not ready to meet her yet. Before leaving, Gonul asks Kahide for a picture of her daughter, wanting to see how she has changed over the years. Kahide agrees, understanding her situation, and gives her a photo of Zeynep. Gonul is delighted, remarks that her daughter looks like her mother. She thanks Kahide again and leaves. Meanwhile, Zeynep asks Melek to wait in the toy store while she meets with her mother and returns. Melek promises not to move from her spot. As Zeynep goes to see her mother, Gonul leaves Kahide's house and is surprised to see her daughter right before her eyes. Not only that, but she hears Melek calling Zeynep Mom. Gonul is puzzled because Kahide had told her that Zeynep wasn't married. Gonul goes to the toy store and meets Melek, helping her pick up the toys that fell on the floor. Zeynep arrives at her mother's office. They are both delighted to see each other, hugging warmly. However, Zeynep feels awkward and distant. Her mother cries, expressing her fear for Zeynep, who apologizes and explains she was busy. Zeynep feels uneasy when asking for money, but Kahide reassures her, saying she's her mother and gives her the amount she needs. Kahide asks Zeynep to attend her sister's wedding so she won't be upset. Zeynep thanks her and leaves. She is shocked to find the toy store on fire when she exits the office. She runs quickly to check on Melek, but is afraid to talk to the officer. The girl who works at the store informs her that Melek left with an older woman. Zeynep sees a note from Melek saying she's at the park. We then see Melek sitting with Gonul, who asks for her mother's name. Melek says it's Zeynep, and just then Zeynep calls for Melek, runs to her, and hugs her. Gonul hides so Zeynep doesn't see her. Zeynep takes Melek to a hotel for the night. In their room, They read the newspapers, and Zeynep becomes anxious when she sees the news about Melek's disappearance. Melek is scared and hugs her. Zeynep reassures her that no one will find them if they are careful. Meanwhile, Sul is watching the news, feeling very sad. Cengiz sits next to her and turns off the TV, telling her not to wait for Melek because she must be dead. Sul is silent and starts to leave, but Cengiz stops her and tries to get close to her. She moves away from him and leaves. That moment, Cengiz gets angry and yells at her. Sul gets ready and tells him she's going to work. Before leaving, she puts her daughter's allowance on the table. We then see Zeynep changing Melek's clothes, which are too big for her. Melek asks what she did with her mother, but Zeynep changes the subject and refuses to answer. They are shocked when they see the news, and Melek breaks down when she sees her mother on TV. The news anchor describes her mother as sad pain. Zeynep asks Melek if she misses her mother, and Melek, crying, says that the anchor doesn't know her mother at all because her mother could never feel sadness and surely isn't praying for her return. Zeynep, affected, suggests that her mother might have changed, but Melek isn't convinced. Zeynep hugs her and tries to comfort her. At this time, Sul leaves the house to find journalists waiting for her and her husband. She angrily tells them to leave and notices Ali taking pictures from a distance. Cengiz asks Sul to tell the journalists that their daughter is dead to quickly end the situation. He angrily demands that she stop pretending to be the grieving mother. We return to Zeynep, who shows Melek a pigeon outside. Melek is delighted and asks when Zeynep started loving birds. Zeynep shares a story from her childhood about a bird in their bathroom that she couldn't reach. She got a chair to give it food because it was trapped, but later she couldn't hear its voice and thought it had died. Melek tells her that the bird probably flew away and might have kids now. Zeynep is moved when Melek says she's sure the bird hasn't forgotten that she fed it. The next day, Zeynep wakes up to find Melek sitting by the window watching the birds. Melek apologizes, saying she didn't mean to wake her up. Zeynep is surprised and assures her she's not upset, glad to be awake to go out and look for a job. She promises Melek that they will soon live in their own house. Melek reassures Zeynep, saying she will find a job because she is very talented. Zeynep mentions she had a job offer at the university and gets ready to check it out, but she's disappointed to find that her professor has transferred to another university, meaning she can't get the job. Before leaving, Zeynep notices job ads and calls the advertiser, offering to work. She tells him she is a university graduate in photography, but is surprised to learn they need a cafeteria worker. Meanwhile, Melek is at the hotel, very hungry. She searches for food, but finds none, though she does find some money. She gets an idea and decides to go downstairs to buy food, planning to return quickly, reassured that her mother won't be back soon. Gonul is sitting outside the hotel when she sees Melek entering the supermarket. She sits beside her as Melek draws. Melek is happy to see her. Gonul gives her a pen to draw with, but Melek wants a lighter color. Gonul notices Melek's real name on her eraser and asks about it, but Melek denies having two names and becomes reluctant to talk. She leaves her alone to play and buys her a new pen. Zeynep buys a magazine with job ads and calls several places until she finds a job. On the way, her sister Doruk calls just as Zeynep gets into a taxi. Doruk overhears Zeynep saying the address and scolds her for not keeping in touch and staying in a hotel. Zeynep explains she's looking for a new house and that it's better this way. Doruk asks to meet, and Zeynep agrees to see her after work. After hanging up, Zeynep sees Melek playing with Gonul in the park. She quickly gets out of the taxi and runs to her, asking what she's doing outside despite being warned. Melek apologizes, saying she was very hungry, so she went out. Zeynep believes her and notices Melek is barefoot, asking her to put on her shoes so she doesn't get cold. Zeynep thanks Gonul for watching over her daughter. As they talk, Zeynep starts coughing, making Gonul concerned and suggests seeing a doctor. Zeynep mentions she has a cold due to the broken hotel window. Gonul remains worried about her daughter as they part ways. That night, Gamze talks to her sister Doruk, who is preoccupied and not responding. Doruk tells Gamze she spoke to Zeynep, who was busy but promised to call. Gamze remarks that Zeynep often says she'll call and then disappears, asking if Doruk knows which hotel Zeynep is staying at so she can deliver her wedding invitation. Doruk refuses, not wanting to visit Zeynep without prior contact, but Gamze insists. He sees Zeynep brushing Melek's hair, and Melek asks if she found a job. Zeynep says not yet. Melek reassures her, expressing confidence that she will find work. Zeynep comforts her, promising they will get a new house soon. At that moment, her sisters arrive, and Melek gets scared and hides quickly. Zeynep becomes flustered, telling Doruk she promised to call. Doruk is surprised to see Melek hiding, who then runs to Zeynep for protection. Zeynep tells her sisters that Melek is her daughter, daughter, leaving them shocked and confused. Meanwhile, Cengiz and Sul go to a restaurant where Ali is secretly watching them. Sul drinks to get drunk, and they notice the journalist observing them. Cengiz tells his wife that the journalists will never believe it was an accident. He insists she close the case because they will be in serious trouble if the truth comes out. Sul gets angry at her husband, saying she won't close the case without good reason, as their daughter might still be alive. Cengiz raises his voice, but then lowers it when he remembers the journalist is watching them. He forces Sul to go to the police station and close the case, threatening her that the situation could harm her more than him, as he could go to the station and report that she put their only daughter in a garbage bag and left her at the doorstep. Frightened by his threats, Sul complies. Cengiz then walks over to Ali's table and asks if he can join them to hear what they are talking about. Meanwhile, Zeynep has to justify what happened to her sisters. Gamze accuses her of having a child out of wedlock. Doruk reminds Gamze that she is also pregnant before marriage. Gamze retorts that she is getting married in 2 days and asks Zeynep to attend the wedding alone, fearing her fiancé's family will talk about them. Zeynep reassures her, saying she won't attend the wedding at all. Doruk tries to calm Gamze down, asking her to think first about how to inform her fiancé's family about the pregnancy. Zeynep is surprised to learn that her sister's fiancé is the one who asked her not to speak about. Gamze asks about Melek's father. Zeynep lies, saying he was her university friend. Gamze says that's why Zeynep left home, because she couldn't face their mother. Doruk gets flustered and says the girl doesn't resemble Zeynep, just like Zeynep doesn't resemble their mother. Doruk tries to calm Melek while her sisters argue, telling her that they always fight but love each other very much. Afterward, Doruk bids farewell to her sister and leaves. We then return to Cengiz, who pretends to Ali that he is deeply saddened by Melek's disappearance, lying about taking care of her, dressing her, and feeding her. Ali mentions that the body hasn't been found, implying there is still hope. Cengiz pretends to cry, insisting that their daughter is dead and his wife can't speak due to the trauma. Ali insists on questioning Sul, asking if she knew her daughter would go to the pier. Cengiz, frustrated, says they didn't know and that they didn't send her there. Ali apologizes, saying he didn't mean to offend. Cengiz takes his wife and leaves, warning her not to talk. Sul is scared when Ali gives her his number, telling her to call him anytime. She reluctantly takes the card and walks away. When it's time to sleep, Melek tells Zeynep that she really liked her sister Doruk, and also Gamze, even though she's a bit grumpy. Melek is happy when Zeynep asks her to call them aunt. She feels like she finally has a grandmother and aunts. She asks Zeynep if her mother will believe that she's her daughter. Zeynep becomes flustered and doesn't know how to respond, revealing her fear of her mother finding out. At that moment, Ali calls Zeynep, but she doesn't answer. He sends her a message saying he wants to talk about Melek since she was one of her students. Zeynep becomes worried, but still doesn't respond. The next day, Zeynep prepares food for Melek and asks her not to leave the room at all. Melek agrees, but it seems she has caught a cold. Zeynep doesn't notice and leaves for a job interview. We then see Kahide having breakfast with her daughters, who tell her they met Zeynep at the hotel where she's staying. Gamze wants to tell their mother more, but Doruk stops her. Sul gets ready to go to the market. Cengiz tells her to go to the police station, threatening to leave her if she doesn't comply. Meanwhile, Zeynep discovers that the job advertisement was for a cleaning position, not a photographer. She decides to take the job to support Melek, who becomes very ill and can't get out of bed. Melek doesn't tell Zeynep, who remains unaware. Sul returns home and tells her husband she'll go to the police station later. They argue, and he demands she do whatever he asks. Sul leaves him and goes to the bathroom, breaking down in tears. Melek's condition worsens, while Zeynep works, who is also sick with a cold. Melek keeps drinking water and watches the clock, realizing Zeynep will be late. She tries to call Zeynep, but Zeynep doesn't answer because she's working. Melek attempts to close the window and sees the pen that Gonul gave her. Noticing Gonul's number on it, Melek decides to call Gonul and asks her to come over so they can play. Gonul, who is at work, tells Melek she can't come without Zeynep's knowledge. Melek thanks Gonul for the pen, and Gonul realizes from the call that Melek is sick, so she heads to the hotel. When Zeynep finishes work, she calls Melek, but Melek doesn't answer. We see Cengiz emotionally blackmailing Sul, packing his clothes and pretending he's going to leave her and move to Istanbul. Sul panics and asks him what he's doing. He angrily tells her that she didn't listen to him, takes his clothes, and starts to leave. Sul breaks down, begging him not to leave. Cengiz remains adamant, getting agitated when she yells at him, accusing him of causing their daughter's death and now wanting to abandon her. Sul is shocked when Cengiz slaps her, yet she doesn't react. She kneels at his feet, pleading with him not to go, promising to do whatever he wants, and that she will go to the police station. Meanwhile, Zeynep returns to the hotel and is terrified when she doesn't find Melek there. She finds a note with the receptionist from Gonul, reassuring her that Melek is with her and providing her address. Zeynep rushes to Gonul's place. Gonul tells her that Melek was very sick and had a high fever. She took her to the hospital, but the doctor refused to prescribe medication because Melek had no identification. Gonul was also afraid to give her any medicine, not knowing if Melek had any allergies. Zeynep becomes flustered, realizing she can't get medical help for Melek. She tells Gonul she'll wait a bit. If Melek remains sick, she'll take her to the hospital. Gonul reassures her and makes tea, suggesting they stay for a while. She explains that she lives alone. Zeynep thanks her, apologizing for the inconvenience, and mentions that Melek must have told her that her phone was off, which is why she couldn't be reached. Zeynep is surprised when Gonul says that Melek didn't mention being sick. She sensed it from her voice. Zeynep feels embarrassed and says that a mother can sense what her child needs. Gonul remarks that Melek is very strong, didn't want to worry Zeynep. Zeynep feels guilty for burdening Melek because they recently moved and have no proper home. She mentions that the hotel they're staying in is terrible. Gonul asks why she doesn't go to her mother's place. Zeynep explains that she doesn't want to be a burden on her. Gonul tells her that mothers spend their entire lives for their children's happiness, that it would be best if she went to her mother's place. Zeynep reveals that she was adopted. She was 5 years old after her mother abandoned her. She doesn't know why her mother left her, where she was born, or even her birthday. Her adoptive mother would light a candle on her birthday to make her happy. But the truth is, she's not happy in her life because she doesn't know when her birthday is. Zeynep apologizes to Gonul for sharing her problems and says she doesn't know why she's opening up to her. Gonul reassures her, encouraging her to continue. Gonul is deeply moved when Zeynep recounts the day her mother left her. Before abandoning her, her mother took her out, bought her the toys she wanted, and they went to the garden where her mother gave her a flower. That moment was the happiest in her life, but she didn't know it would be the last good day, as her mother left her shortly after. Zeynep cries as she tells the story, saying her mother wouldn't have left if she hadn't been distracted by the flowers. She shares that she has always remembered the touch of her mother's hands, even though she can't remember her face. She believes she could recognize her mother among thousands by the feel of her hands alone. After finishing her story, Zeynep thanks Gonul for listening until the end. Gonul gets up to make more tea and asks Zeynep if she wishes to see her mother again. Zeynep asks Gonul for her opinion on unconditional love. She explains that people often say parents love their children unconditionally, but she thinks the opposite is true because children accept anything from their parents, even abuse or abandonment, still love them. That's why no parent should ever abandon their children. To her, that is true unconditional love. Gonul agrees, turning away to hide her tears and muffling her cries so Zeynep wouldn't hear. The next day, Melek wakes up to find Zeynep sleeping beside her. She apologizes for going out without telling her, but Zeynep is the one who apologizes, saying it was good that she went to Gonul. Gonul listens happily as they talk. Melek hugs Zeynep, calling her the best mom in the world. Zeynep asks Melek to get dressed so they can leave. Melek suggests staying with Gonul while Zeynep goes to work. Zeynep explains that Gonul has helped them a lot, but is still a stranger. They shouldn't bother her more. She promises they will visit again, and Melek agrees but insists on having breakfast first. Meanwhile, Kahide tries to call Zeynep, but she doesn't answer, making Kahide very worried. Remembering Gonul's words, she decides to visit her house. As Zeynep and Melek are leaving, Gonul says goodbye and gives Melek a gift, a new pair of shoes. She noticed that Melek's shoes were too tight, which is why she often took them off. Zeynep realizes that she had bought a smaller size, but Melek didn't say anything to avoid making her spend more money. Melek is happy with the new shoes and thanks Gonul, who is very pleased. As they leave, Melek plays with a little cat, and Gonul takes the opportunity to advise Zeynep to return to her mother because it's not right for her daughter to be alone in a hotel. At the same time, Kahide sees Zeynep standing with Gonul and quickly gets out of her car and enters the shop. Kahide is furious and wants to hit Gonul, but stops at the last moment. She tells Gonul that she has no right to see Zeynep. Gonul, feeling hurt, reassures her that Zeynep knows nothing and says she found her by coincidence. Kahide demands that Gonul stay away from Zeynep, as she won't allow her to ruin their lives. Gonul asks Kahide to tell Zeynep her real birth date, but Kahide refuses, saying her birthday is the day she was adopted. Meanwhile, Ali is in Istanbul, calling his brother to get Zeynep's address, determined to meet her regarding Melek. Melek goes to the park to play, and Zeynep, pondering Gonul's advice, decides to go to her mother's house to keep Melek safe. Gonul reads the newspaper and is shocked to see the news of Melek's disappearance. Realizing Melek isn't Zeynep's daughter after recalling the eraser with Melek's name, and noting that Zeynep knew nothing about her daughter, Zeynep enters her mother's house, reassuring Melek that they will take care of everything and no one will find out anything. Just as she enters, Ali arrives and sees her, though he can't clearly see the child with her. Doruk is surprised when she opens the door and finds Zeynep, calling for their mother. Kahide is overjoyed and hugs Zeynep, but is shocked to see Melek. Zeynep introduces Melek as her daughter and asks Doruk to take Melek to the garden so she can talk to their mother. Kahide breaks down, telling Zeynep that as her mother, she didn't even know she had a daughter. She is further shocked to learn that Melek is 7 years old. Ali knocks on the door and asks for Zeynep, but the maid refuses to let him in, apologizing and saying she is busy. Ali remembers Doruk, Zeynep's sister, who had inquired about Zeynep at the school and asks for Doruk. The maid informs him that Doruk is in the garden. Ali goes to the garden and sees Doruk playing with Melek. Melek gets nervous when she hears them talking and realizes Ali is a journalist asking about her. She hides to avoid being seen. Ali is surprised to learn that Zeynep has a daughter. Doruk tells him that her sister is busy, but will inform her that he was asking for her and will have her call him. Ali thanks her and leaves. Back with Kahide, she asks Zeynep about the girl's father. Zeynep explains that he was a university friend. Kahide is shocked to learn that Zeynep had a child out of wedlock and asks why she did such a thing. Gamze makes a snide comment, suggesting the girl's father was probably married. Zeynep tries to comfort her mother and apologizes. Kahad cries, saying she needs some time to process what has happened and retreats to her room. Gamze is pleased that Zeynep has fallen from their mother's favor, revealing her jealousy because their mother always preferred Zeynep. Zeynep goes outside to Melek, who runs to her, hugging her and asking her not to leave. Zeynep takes her to their room, which is very large, and Melek is impressed. Melek asks if her mother was upset with her. Zeynep reassures her that her mother was surprised but will adjust and will certainly come to love her. She just needs some time for everything to be all right. Melek tells her about Ali looking for her and reassures Zeynep that she hid and wasn't seen. Zeynep gets scared and hugs Melek. Meanwhile, Sul goes to the police station with Cengiz, reluctantly entering. Cengiz reminds her that she begged him to come and takes her to the officer's office, where the officer hands her some of her daughter's belongings. Sul asks the officer if there are any updates about her daughter. The officer says there are no new updates and that they are still searching. Cengiz asserts that Melek is surely dead and asks what will happen if they don't find her. The officer says they have to wait. Cengiz requests a death certificate to proceed with the funeral arrangements, but the officer refuses, explaining that it requires a court ruling, which only happens after at least 5 years. Cengiz is shocked because all his plans have been ruined. Sul takes her daughter's belongings. They leave the station. Cengiz asks her to show everyone that her daughter is dead, so the neighbors will stop talking. Sul asks him what a mother whose daughter has died is supposed to look like. Cengiz becomes flustered and doesn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, Gonal goes to the park to see Melek but doesn't find her. Ali returns to the newspaper where he works. The manager asks Ali if there are any updates about the girl who drowned in the sea. Ali tells him there's nothing new, and he finds it strange that no one has seen her body. However, he's sure something new is happening. He informs the manager that the girl's mother works at a nightclub and is married to a man who seems mentally unstable, making him suspicious of them. Meanwhile, Kahide gets angry at the maid. Gamze tells Doruk that she would have caused an uproar if she were in their mother's place because Zeynep must know she did something wrong, which is why she stayed away for so many years, clearly ashamed of what she did. Doruk gets annoyed at Gamze's comments and asks her to be quiet so Zeynep doesn't hear. Doruk then takes Melek to the kitchen to feed her some sweets their mother made. The manager calls Zeynep, reminding her that she's late for work. She apologizes, explaining there was an issue with her daughter. Melek watches Kahide nervously, but thanks her for the sweets. Kahide is surprised when she sees Melek washing the dish she used, and Doruk quickly tells Melek to leave it because the maid will wash it. Melek asks Zeynep to either take her to work or let her play at Gonal's place. Kahide asks who Melek is talking about. Zeynep explains that Melek met a woman in the park who was very kind to her. Kahide is shocked to learn they're talking about Gonal, refuses to let Melek go to her place, insisting that she stays with her family and not with strangers. Melek agrees to stay with Doruk. Zeynep promises she won't be late. Meanwhile, Gonal goes to the hotel to check on Zeynep and gets worried when she learns Zeynep hasn't returned since the previous night. Sula, meanwhile, keeps drinking until she's drunk, can't bear to see her daughter's belongings in the house. She decides to gather everything, put it in a garbage bag. She hesitates to throw away the hat, but eventually does and leaves the house. Cengiz is puzzled by her actions and fears she might expose them. Sula goes to the sea and throws all her daughter's belongings into it, breaking down and screaming. Cengiz follows her and asks her to come back with him. She agrees. Ali sends another message to Zeynep, saying he needs to meet her urgently, but Zeynep still doesn't respond. After work, she returns home and sees Gamze yelling at the maid because she's nervous about her fiancé visiting the house. Gamze tells Zeynep that she hasn't told him she has a daughter. Zeynep tells her that her fiancé isn't marrying her, so her life is none of his business. Gamze retorts that they're talking about the man who will be her husband in the future, which means everything about her is also his concern. children. She adds that the concept of family is special, but Zeynep doesn't understand that. Their mother silences Gamze and asks Zeynep to get ready with her daughter for dinner. She tells Zeynep that she made vegetable soup for Melek because she is sick and asks if Melek likes vegetables. Melek says she does. When they enter the room, Melek asks if her mother likes her. Zeynep reassures her, saying of course she does, and that her mother made a special meal just for her. At that moment, Ali calls his brother and is shocked to learn that Zeynep doesn't have any children. Gamze's fiancé arrives and behaves normally when he learns Zeynep has a daughter. They all have dinner together. Kahede is surprised to see Melek throwing away the vegetables, realizing she doesn't like them contrary to what Zeynep had said. Zeynep gets flustered and asks Melek to finish her plate. Gamze feels relieved when her fiancé leaves, but she tells her sister she was worried when he asked about Melek's father because she doesn't want to tell him that Melek is illegitimate. Later, Melek falls asleep watching TV, and Kahid is moved when she sees her. Zeynep tries to wake Melek, but her mother stops her and asks her to carry Melek. Though unsure, Zeynep tries and is happy when she puts Melek to bed, holding her hand as she sleeps, becoming very emotional. The next day, Kahide talks to Zeynep, saying she won't ask about Melek's father. Zeynep tells her she doesn't want her to worry about it. Kahide says she's her daughter and talks about motherhood, saying she understands what it means to be a mother, but she can't fulfill the role of a grandmother because Zeynep kept Melek away from her. Zeynep apologizes, explaining that she came to Kahid's house at Melek's age, and Kahid worked hard for her. That's why she thought it wouldn't be right to bring her daughter to live in the same house and burden her. Kahid reminds Zeynep that she's very important to them, and then asks Melek to call her Grandma. Melek is delighted, hugs her, and then they make juice together. Ali calls Nesrin and learns that Melek was abused by her family and spent a day at Zeynep's place, and Nesrin wishes she had left Melek there. Ali is surprised and begins to be more suspicious of Zeynep.